Hello, my name's Cliff Freilich. I'm the Executive Director of Cinema St. Louis, and we are the presenters of the 29th Annual Whitaker St. Louis International Film Festival. We're really pleased to be joined by the Director of Sapelo, who is joining us all the way from Switzerland, Nick Brandestini. And the person who's going to be conducting the interview is Alison Carrick. Alison works at Washington U Libraries, but she is herself a documentarian. She was co-director of the St. Louis doc, The First Secret City. She was also the person who did the initial evaluation of the film and gave it an enthusiastic thumbs up from the point of view of insisting that, yes, we must play this film. So I'm going to now exit the picture and turn things over to Alison.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
Hi, Alison. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Well, welcome. And as Cliff said, I had watched the film and I just was stunned by it. I thought the cinematography was amazing and beautiful. And it really brings you into the world of the island and the boys on the island, and just really fantastic work. So thank you for making the film.
Thank you for the kind words.
And I guess my first question would be, how did you learn about the island of Sapelo and the community there? And what drew you to the story?
It started a few years ago when I did a documentary about another community that I found interesting, which was in the desert in the middle of nowhere in California. And it was a portrait of those people living there. There was a community called Darwin, and there were 35 people living in that community. And I had a great experience making that film, and the people in it were happy with the result, and the film played at many film festivals. And so I decided to kind of maybe focus on doing films in a similar way. So my second project was about the community, an Alaska Native community in Barrow, the northernmost town in the US. And then I thought, and which was another great experience for me, and the people there seemed to enjoy it. And so I decided, let me do another, like a trilogy of US communities. And so I decided to, do something in the South. I didn't know exactly what it would be, and because I've never been in that area of the US. And I met an elderly Black lady who was a genealogist on my research tour through the South. I was in Louisiana, and she asked me, knowing that I'm a documentary filmmaker from Switzerland and that I was interested in finding communities that are not so well known, she asked me, have you heard of the Gullah Geechee people? And I told her I have never heard of them. And she was very helpful in guiding me towards that area. And she said, gave me an address of a place called Geechee Kunda, where you could, it's like a museum that teaches about the history of the Gullah Geechee people. And they allowed, to make a long story short, they made it possible for me to visit Sapelo, because it's not so easy to just go there. Plus, I wouldn't want to go there right away and try to make a documentary. I just wanted to learn more about the place. And on my first visit there, I met Cornelia, who turned out to be one of the main characters in the film. And we got along right away, and we spoke for hours and hours. And at that moment, I knew that this is a very interesting place for me. And I was hoping that by making a documentary, it would be something that other people would find interesting as well. And Cornelia was on board right away. So that's how it all started.
Oh, that's great. Well, she's such a central figure in the film. One thing, as I was watching the film, it kind of struck me, well, when I read more about it later, the narration of the film is done by Bonnie Turpin, who starred in Daughters of the Dust. People might be familiar with that film. It's a fictional film by Julie Dash, set in a nearby Gullah community, St. Helena's Island. Were you inspired by that film, or do you see any parallels between your film and Dash's?
That's very interesting you bring that up, because it was a total coincidence. We were, once we decided, when I say we, it was my collaborator, Taylor Segrist, and I, who worked together on this film. When we tried to shape the film, with all the material I got from my numerous visits, the idea of incorporating Cornelia's book came about. She wrote a book about her growing up on the island, and I loved her way of describing her childhood. And we thought it would be nice to find to incorporate parts that were inspired by her story as a narration in the film. And so there was we searched for who could that be, and Bonnie Turpin, we found her, and we didn't even know, we just liked her voice, and because she's a very well known audiobook narrator and has just such a good voice that captivates or captured me. I really wanted to listen to every word she was saying in her books that she did. And then just later we found out that she was actually in that Julie Dash's Daughters of the Dust, and we thought that's perfect. So it's not only that we liked her performance, but that she also had a connection to the material. And of course, I had seen Daughters of the Dust previously, and I really liked it. Also, the way it was shot and the style of the film. So it did inspire me in a way, yes.
Yeah, and I really felt there were some parallels there, especially with the scenes of the boys fishing and just being on the island and being in nature. So it was really fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
So one of my questions was going to be, how did you meet Cornelia, which you already answered. One thing that struck me with what you were doing with the film is that you've got this incredibly beautiful island. It's very idyllic, and it could be tempting to just kind of be swept away with these beautiful images, which there are a lot of beautiful images. But I think your film obviously doesn't present it as a paradise. So could you talk a little bit about how you approached filming this wonderful beauty of the island while also showing the problems and tensions, such as with the developers who are buying up land? And I know Cornelia talked about that too in the film.
Yes, that's a good point. I mean, there's obviously the trap of making this an idyllic looking film, because I personally really love the environment with the forests and the beaches and all these things and the wildlife in general. And so I did, I did the cinematography, and I wanted it to look good, but at the same time, it shouldn't be too much, because it's really about the people living there, and also showing some of the more problematic aspects, like what you just mentioned about the gentrification with the people moving in. So I really wanted to have that in the film, so people get a sense of that this is not paradise. I mean, for a long time, of course, it wasn't for the people, for the enslaved people from Africa who came over on the island. This was only became for them like something resembling a paradise once it was their own place. And Cornelia talks about this in her book, that she wanted to make the island their own. And so for a long time, it was like, I wouldn't say paradise, but it was they really loved to be there and have this island to themselves. And then with the change happening in the last few decades, a lot of things really have changed. And this is quite a difficult topic that, of course, I wanted to address in the film as well.
Yeah, and when I say paradise, obviously there's numerous problems happening, so I didn't mean to say that word exactly, although it looks beautiful. I think there's something really poignant there about there's like this beauty but fragility, both in the environment and then also socially as well, that's
Yes.
very precarious. And I think you brought that out in the film too. It was interesting, you showed people moving. In some ways, people do have to leave the island just to find work, it seems like, or definitely there might not be enough business to support a huge community on the island. And you kind of show them going back and forth between the mainland, the island. There was something that was really interesting in that to me, in that Cornelia, of course, is trying to preserve this space, but at the same time, people do have to leave. And actually Daughters of the Dust talks about that too, but like, should you leave? Should you stay? What should you do? So it kind of becomes this place of refuge, but also transition. Can you talk about, like, are people still moving back and forth between the island that way, or what's happening now with that?
Yes, I mean, one thing that Cornelia really tried to do is to keep the island alive, also economically. And so there's a scene in the film where she talks about the agriculture project that she started with some of her people there. And I'm happy to say that this is now continuing. Her son, who is he's not in the film, but Maurice Bailey is now really in charge with some other people to really continue her legacy of, you know, having like red peas and different foods and agriculture on the island going, so that they're trying to make it. But of course, it's very hard because you have there's no school on the island. And Cornelia's husband, Frank, of course, was a school bus driver and brings the kids to the ferry dock every day. So they have to go to school and then come back. I believe there was a school until the late 70s on the island, but that's long gone. And there's a lot of people on the island that work for the state because it's a nature reserve.
Mm-hmm.
The island is like 95% belongs to the state of Georgia. And there's a lot of activity to keep the forests clean and do all kinds of maintenance on the island.
I'm glad it's a protected area, because I don't know if you know Hilton Head. That's an island that kind of got
Yes.
taken over by golf courses and everything.
Exactly. Yes, that's absolutely. And that's, of course, something that they would like to avoid. And I have visited Hilton Head prior to this. And to me, it was a little, maybe I can say shocking, because it was like a gated community. And I entered, and it was like you had all these gates where you had to say where you're going. And I said, oh, I'm just, looking around. And and this is not what they would like to have happen on Sapelo. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so I'm really glad to hear that the agriculture or that project's going on. That's great.
Yes, and if you go to sapelofilm.com, we have links that go to that talk about that, and also other organizations that are supporting, Sapelo residents' efforts.
You said you first met a genealogist who directed you to Cornelia, but I understand she's also involved in documenting the history of the island, and I assume you maybe talked to her about that too. And
the genealogist or Cornelia?
Or Cornelia.
Oh yeah, Cornelia, of course. And she is like the storyteller, or griot, as she calls herself, of the island. Mm-hmm. And she has wrote other books too. And when she, people would flock to her from all over the U.S. and apparently also from Switzerland to visit her and to listen to her talk, because she had she would just sit there in her gazebo or on the front porch or somewhere on the island, and people would really listen to her. So she has like it's like really one of the voices of Sapelo, who knows the most about the history. I mean, there's certainly a lot of other people who know, but she has really become one of the leading voices of the island.
Oh, that's great. It seems like when you were filming the boys, you just had such a good rapport with them. And of course, kids can be incredibly natural, or very naturalistic. Can you talk about how you found them, or how you convinced them to be in the film, and how that went?
Yes, one story I always like to tell is when I was just talking with Cornelia in the gazebo for a while, and I was just with my camera trying to get some shots of the island, not of the people yet, because I didn't want to be too intrusive on my first visit, but I saw there was a horse walking around in the garden, and I tried to film it. And then all of a sudden, this young guy comes running towards me, and it was Marcus. And he was really, excited and wondering, who is this guy with this huge camera walking around? And he was so interested in what I was doing, and I found out he was Cornelia's grandson. And that's when I realized that it would be nice to also include him and his other brothers in the movie as part of that family, and to focus on them. And so I think we got along right away, but of course you have to get people to be comfortable in front of the camera, and also not, that's what happened with the brothers. Sometimes they would be a little they wanted to be like actors and do crazy stuff, and I felt it was a little unnatural, because it's, you know, it's supposed to be a documentary and not a fiction. And so I had to just wait for the right moments to do interviews, and then, you know, follow them around to see what they were doing for real on a daily basis. And so I knew what I wanted to capture, because I knew what they were doing.
Yeah, no, they're great. They're really lovely guys. And yeah, I think, do you have anything else you'd like to add or say about the film?
I mean, first of all, thank you all for watching. It's a honor for me. Every person who watches it, I'm very thankful for. And I wish I could be there with you all, and maybe next year I'll visit just as an audience member and check out the films in the real cinema. I hope that, you know, returns soon.
Well, that'd be
But
fantastic. And I hope we can go to Switzerland too soon. So, gosh, thank you so much.
yeah,
And thank
I
you
want
for
to,
the film.
of course, I want to thank you for discovering the film. That's amazing. Of course, that's always the best way, that somebody, you know, like you is like a champion for the film. So I just want to thank you again for that.
Oh, no, well, you're welcome. And thank you.
All right. Thank you.